Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first are the headlines. Government launches cheap and affordable power connection. Journalists seek redress from the High Court against police brutality. President Tshisekedi's supporter elected Senate President. Now the news in detail. The government, through the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, has launched the Electricity Connections Policy that will provide free power connections to domestic users in Uganda. Nahabwe has more.
Addressing the press at the Uganda Media Center in Kampala, the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, Honorable Mary Goretti Chituntu, said that government will hand over connection materials procured under projects with connection components, commission completed projects, and launch new projects countrywide, with an aim of promoting clean energy as well as socio-economic transformation of the country. The minister said that government has allocated 14.2 billion shillings to Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited and small service providers to partly pay for already made connections.
It gives me a great pleasure and honor to launch the resumption of the Electricity Connection Policy that was established in 2018 but had to be put on hold in December 2020. Due to financial constraints. Government will also be handing over connection materials procured under projects with connection component, commission completed projects, and launch new projects countrywide. For the financial year 2020-2021 releases, government has also allocated 14.2 billion to Uganda Electricity Distribution Company and small service providers to partly pay for already made connections and commence new connections on 8th March 2021. This will enable resumption of the electricity connection policy, starting with no pole connections with effect from 8th March 2021 for all service providers including Umeme Limited, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, Kilembe Investment Limited, Chegegwa Rural Electrification Cooperative Society, West Nile Rural Electrification Company Limited, Pader Abim Community Multipurpose Electricity Cooperative Society, and Kalangala Infrastructure Services Limited.
She added that the new connections will commence on 8th March 2021, which will enable resumption of electricity connection policy, starting with no-pole connections for all service providers, including Umeme, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, Chilembe Investments Limited. According to the minister, the policy, which was established in 2018 and put on hold in December 2020 due to financial constraints, has been revived with more funding from the African Development Bank and the Exim Bank of China. Nahawa Kajura, Africa Today.
Moving on, a group of journalists have filed an application at High Court Civil Division, Kampala, against Lieutenant Colonel Namanya Napoleon and the Attorney General seeking justice on police brutality against journalists. Our reporter Nalugo has more.
Last month, a group of journalists who had gone to cover National Unity Platform's Robert Chagulanyi, taking his petition to the United Nations offices in Kampala, were brutally assaulted by a group of military officers where many sustained injuries. Today, journalists, through their lawyer Aaron Kiza, have filed a case at High Court Civil Division seeking justice for journalists who fell victim. These include NTV's John Cliff Wamala, NBS's Josephine Namakumbi, Record TV News anchor Shamim Nabakoza, and NTV cameraman Geoffrey Twesije.
It was very sad. It's unacceptable to some legal minds like me. It's unfortunate what happened to these journalists and others out there. We understand they're out. And so that's why we have issued the commandant of that grisly operation. That's why we have also joined the Attorney General to answer for the others who are not, who we didn't specifically sue, partly because they were not easily identifiable, although they are there. But also the real problem lies with the commander, who is schooled, who is intelligent, and who has a senior rank, who shouldn't have commanded his juniors to do wrong things. So if you think that by beating journalists they will stop covering your events, then I think UPDF is being misled. Journalists, I think, will continue covering those events, although they are brutalized, although some of them are still mentally recapitulating from the audio.
Journalists want, among others, a declaration that the mistreatment of journalists at the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights by security was a violation of freedom of expression and media freedom guaranteed by Article 29 of the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Journalists want court to issue a permanent injunction that the scenes which happened on the 17th of February 2021 never happen again, and want compensation for the injuries inflicted on them and time lost while nursing wounds. Nalugo Muyingo, Africa Today.
Away from that, the Ministry of Education and Sports has appealed to school owners and head teachers to emphasize on the standard operation procedures for COVID-19 as guided by experts and health officials in the ongoing reopening of schools for semi-candidates. Nahabwe reports.
Speaking to journalists at the Uganda Media Center in Kampala on Wednesday, the 3rd of March 2021, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health, Alex Kakoza, said that all school heads must ensure that all learners in day and boarding sections are treated separately to minimize the spread of COVID-19 by social distancing. Kakoza advised teachers to follow government directives of choosing either boarding or day schooling and have separate class intervals.
Schools operating day as day and boarding shall make arrangements to ensure that their learners, are kept separate. Because, the background to this was to ensure that those who are in, when they go in really, as much as possible should not interact with those who are coming out. And when we first reopened for candidates, we even wanted all of them, if possible, to stay in. This is to minimize unnecessary contact. Ladies and gentlemen, we have strategies for recovery of lost time, and these are premised on the following guiding principles. 1, that all essential curriculum content shall be recovered over a period of the education cycle, and that cycle includes the lower primary, upper primary, lower secondary, and upper secondary. We also recognize that curriculum delivery is sequential, is cumulative, is spiral, and concentric. Therefore, curriculum coverage should not be restricted to a particular class in an education cycle, especially during a period like this one in which
for schools with both sections. According to Kakoza, the pre-primary schools will remain under lockdown until further communication. Government has cautioned schools about raising school charges during this COVID-19 pandemic, and the culprits will be brought to book. Today, the 3rd of March 2021, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Mr. Alex Kakoza, has issued guidelines that are supposed to be followed by schools regarding the President's speech of opening up semi-candidate classes. But surprisingly, pre-primary schools, call them the nursery schools, are still under a lockdown. Nahawe Kajura, Africa Today.
Let's take a quick break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. The Democratic Republic of Congo has elected Senator Modeste Bahati Lukwebo, a supporter of President Felix Tshisekedi, as the next Senate leader on Tuesday. Kachanchu reports.
According to the provisional president of the upper house of Congolese parliament, Leon Mamboleo, Senator Modesto Bahati Lokwebo garnered an absolute majority of votes and became the president of the Senate. Lukwebo's election follows the formation of a new parliamentary majority to remove the camp of the former head of state, Joseph Kabila, from power. With the election of Bahati, President Tshisekedi has placed his supporters at the head of the country's three most important political institutions. Christophe Mboso was elected president of the National Assembly, and Jean-Michel Sama Lukonde is now prime minister. This new government will be known in the next few days, according to the people close to the new prime minister. TV Africa News, Kachanchu Mtabazi reporting.
Away from that, in fulfilling their cultural traditions, the Maasai, a noble ethnic group whose pastoral communities are mainly found in East Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania, continue to honor their rights. Nalugo has more.
One of the cultural traditions by the Maasai in the final rite of passage to transition from a warrior into an elder of a Maasai man who has already lived through the phase from boy through to warrior. According to John Tompoi, a Maasai junior elder, during this whole process, there are three important stages during any other particular age set and have been safeguarded by UNESCO. The first one is Enchipata, and this one is for the uncircumcised boys, where fathers took through their boys. After Enchipata, which is the first rite that was safeguarded by UNESCO, you go to Unoto, which is a vital male rites of passage ceremony that is performed to mark the important transition of Maasai warriors entering into manhood.
There are three important stages during any other particular age set. The first one, and these three stages have been safeguarded by UNESCO. These three stages, the first one is called Enkepata, and this one is for the uncircumcised boys. Now our fathers had to take us through Enkepata. After Enkepata, and that is the first rite that was safeguarded by UNESCO, you go to Eunoto. So this last one is Orngesher. It's very, very important because you have to undergo the three rites of passage for you to be admitted as a young elder into the society.
Then last is the Olngeshel, where you have to undergo the three rites of passage for you to be admitted as a young elder into the society. This colorful and dynamic display of an indigenous African cultural expression has been passed down from generation to generation for numerous years and needs to be persevered for the pride of Africa. Nalgo Muyingo, Africa Today.
Moving on, the United Nations on Tuesday said it was outraged over an attack by suspected jihadists linked to the Islamic State group in northeast Nigeria that directly targeted aid facilities. We have more on this story.
Scores of Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP fighters invaded the town of Dikwa in the restive Borno State, dislodging troops from the military base, touching the humanitarian hub and trapping 25 aid workers, security and humanitarian, according to local sources. The military source said that military reinforcements, including fighter jets and a helicopter gunship, had been deployed to help repel the attackers. The ISWAP group split from the US-sponsored terrorists, the Boko Haram, in 2016 and has become a dominant threat in the region, attacking soldiers and bases while killing and kidnapping passengers at bogus checkpoints. The violence has spread into neighboring Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, prompting a regional military coalition to fight the militants. Nalgo Muyingo, Africa Today.
Away from that, police in Myanmar repeatedly used tear gas and rubber bullets on Tuesday against crowds protesting last month's coup, intensifying standoffs between protesters and security forces. Let's take a look.
Authorities have escalated their crackdown on the protests in Myanmar in recent days, killing at least 18 people on Sunday and sending thousands with injuries. Despite the increasingly brutal crackdown, demonstrators have continued to flood the streets, demanding the release of the detained opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi, and are beginning to more rigorously resist attempts to disperse them. Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party would have been installed for a second 5-year term, but instead she was detained along with President Win Myint and other senior officials. The military government has charged Suu Kyi, 75, with several offences that critics say are trumped up merely to keep her jailed and potentially prevent her from participating in the election promised in a year's time by the military. Nalgo Muyingo, Africa Today.
In our business news today, Sudan and Egypt's foreign ministers have met over Ethiopian dam for bilateral cooperation over the Nile water business. Kachanchu reports.
At a joint news conference in Cairo on Tuesday, the former foreign ministers of Sudan and Egypt met to discuss the bilateral cooperations as well as the urgency of reaching a legal agreement on the filling and operating of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the River Nile, which has been causing controversy in the region. The ministers expressed concern about the stalled negotiations, stressing the importance of water security and preserving the water rights of all three countries as they called on Ethiopia to show goodwill. The officials agreed on the formation of an international negotiation mechanism made up of the European Union, the United Nations, the United States, and the organization's current chair, the Democratic Republic of Congo, to manage all negotiation activities. TV Africa News, Kachanchu Mtabazi reporting.
And in health, nearly 4 million coronavirus jabs arrived in Nigeria on Tuesday, making Africa's most populous nation the latest country to receive vaccines from COVAX, a global scheme to provide free inoculations. Our reporter Nahabwe has more on this story.
An Emirates flight carrying the shipment of 3.94 million AstraZeneca doses arrived shortly before noon at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in the capital of Abuja, according to UN and Nigeria's health agency. The AstraZeneca vaccines, manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, that arrived in Nigeria are the first of 16 million doses that COVAX plans to deliver over the coming months to the country of 2 million people. Nigeria's Food and Drug Control Agency approved the AstraZeneca vaccine for use last month and are to start administering doses to frontline health workers from Friday. A new virus variant has also been discovered in Nigeria, but researchers have not yet determined if it is more contagious or deadly than the original strain.
Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories. Government launches cheap and affordable power connection. Journalists seek redress from the High Court against police brutality. President Tshisekedi's supporter elected Senate President. That was the news. Thank you for always keeping it TV Africa. Please do stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.